Hello. Okay. Hello everyone. Um, okay, so the Tai Chi of reading basically began as a bit of a gimmick with one of my IELTS class. Um, the it was a new group of adults who'd all been out of the education system for a while, and I think one of the problems they were having with the reading texts was um, using the strategies they needed to answer the questions on the IELTS reading paper.
Sorry to interrupt you, David, but you're very quiet. Could you try and put your microphone closer to your mouth or turn up your volume a little bit?
Um, yeah, so I'm not sure whether kids who've come up through the educational system in the schools will need this in quite the same way. Um, and I should also add, as a Tai Chi disclaimer, I have been going to Tai Chi classes for about 2 months, so I know very, very little about this. And I have co-opted my Tai Chi instructor, Neil, to perform in the videos for you so that you can see how it all should be done. The other thing he made me promise to tell you is that 3 of the 4 exercises you will see are not technically Tai Chi. They are part of Qi Gong, but I honestly have no idea how that relates to Tai Chi or not. So, sorry. Why Tai Chi and reading? What are the connections there? I think there are parallels between the two. Tai Chi is it's all it's called meditation and movement, and it demands some intense concentration and focus from the practitioners. There's focus on getting the forms right. Sound familiar at all? And I think if we think about what we want to achieve when we're teaching the reading skill, a lot of the strategies we uh, try to develop in our learners, I think they start as strategies, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to move them from a strategy into a skill. And so essentially, I think that involves moving things from a conscious to a subconscious process, which is also what you're trying to do when you're practicing your Tai Chi. And so it's this automaticity of process that we're aiming for. I think with reading strategies, one of the problems is that learners feel sometimes that these reading strategies are quite abstract and they're internal processes. And from a teaching point of view, trying to work out whether the learners are using these strategies or not is quite tricky, because all we see is a learner looking at the page. We don't know what's going on inside their brains. So the aims in this session and the aims of using Tai Chi processes with reading are to turn reading strategies into something physical and external, to help learners better understand what these processes are, to help learners make the strategies more automatic, to make it all much more memorable for them, and obviously this also caters to a variety of learning styles. We've just seen in Barry's session, he ran through some of the reading strategies and skills that we need. I'm afraid there's going to be a small amount of repetition here. The skim reading and reading for gist is one of the things we try to teach our learners as an initial text access skill. And the point here is not to read every word. The metaphor I try and use with students sometimes, I doubt that, Barry. The metaphor I try and use with students sometimes is like skipping a stone across the surface of a pond. You bounce across the surface. You don't actually dive in to the pond to see what's at the bottom. So the aim with that is for students to have a general understanding of the text, what it's about, and where the main ideas in the text are. So if we move to the next slide, we should see our first video, which is that's it. Oh, do I press play? So this is Neil demonstrating a Qigong breathing exercise. It's also quite good brain gym for people who are into that. So as we move our hands up and down the page, it's analogous to moving our eyes around, and as we bring our arms down, this is us getting a general idea of what the text is about. Okay. It was very windy, yeah. This was taken on the top of a Portuguese hillside. This is actually Neil's back garden. Okay. Alright, so I think we can stop that one there. I think you get the idea there. Okay. So yeah, so that's the idea for yeah. That's the idea for skim reading and reading for gist. We move on to scanning, which Barry did mention, but unfortunately I was too busy just finishing off my notes for this to actually listen to what he said. But scanning uses a very similar visual process to skimming. Again, it's about moving the eyes across the page. This time, however, you're not so much skimming the surface, but you're looking for this specific bit of information. The text on the right, I don't know if you can see that, was you just want that one bit of information, and it's like pattern recognition. So the analogy for that, again with the Tai Chi, is a process called separating heaven and earth, which is oh, hang on. Thank you. How do I get rid of the arrow? Okay, there we go. Okay. So this is from, I think I'm right in saying this is also Qigong, and it's a thing called Badawan Jim. And again, as Neil moves his hands, we have the analogy with the idea of skimming through the words, trying to find the ones that we want. If I can play that again. And there we go, as we move our hands up and to the sides, we find the bit of information that we want. Okay. Again, that's the theory. Sorry, just to respond to Sabrina's points with lower levels, I think this is one of the reasons why the association with the physical actions can be quite useful. I mean, higher levels tend to have more familiarity with this. Certainly in Portugal, by the time you've got people who are at FCE or CAE, in our case here, they've usually been with the school for a number of years. And they've had exposure to course books that sort of at least pay lip service to the idea of skimming and scanning, even if they don't always get it right. So in theory, they have a better idea of what the skills involve and what the strategies involve. But as I said, with my IELTS class, who'd been out of information, this was quite a useful way of making these processes more concrete for them. It gave them something that they could remember and associate with these strategies. Okay, so again, moving on to cohesive devices and text structure. Anyone who teaches FCE or CAE, where you have the text insertion, this is quite a useful thing for students to get to grips with. There's obviously a number of different ways that texts link together, successfully or not, as the case may be. You have reference devices like synonym and paraphrase chains, linking devices, and pronoun references. So you have in the first picture here an example of anaphoric reference going backwards in the text, and on the right cataphoric reference which go forwards in the text. So the analogy that we've got with cohesive devices is a Tai Chi move called drawing an arrow to shoot the tiger's tail. Can we get the video? Thank you. Oh. Okay, so Neil's coming down on his knees here, and the analogy is pulling a bow to shoot the tiger's tail. And as you see, as he's going left and right in the video, so we can associate that with our anaphoric and cataphoric references, looking forwards and backwards in the text to help us find the ideas. Okay. How are we doing for time? Okay. So can we lose it? Thank you. Okay, and one of the final things I think that one of the final problems I think learners have is obviously when they meet unknown vocabulary. This is something it's really hard to help learners with. It's like a roadblock, you know. They're driving their reading car along the motorway and then smack into the wall. They just don't know where to go, and they find they can't get past these unknown words. So one of the things I think is really important for us to teach our students is that a lot of the time unknown vocabulary is unimportant. They don't need to know the meaning of every word, and you know that's obviously quite difficult concept to get into learners' minds. But with exam classes, they don't have time to stop and try and work out the meaning of every single word they don't understand. So that you have to get them into the mindset: is it important? If it's not important, move on. If they're going through the text, skimming it in an initial reading, then they shouldn't stop at all. They should just keep going, because the purpose is not to understand every word. But if they are scanning through the text for a keyword they've identified in the question and they need to come back to it, then okay, then they need to maybe come back to that word and try and figure it out. But the key with this aspect of Tai Chi here is to help learners avoid getting hung up on not knowing. So here we've got a Tai Chi move, and apparently this is actual Tai Chi, called 7-star step. It involves coordination of both hands and feet. I have huge problems when I try and do this in my Tai Chi classes, because it's like 1.5 steps. So what I see Neil doing here is pushing past the vocabulary that he doesn't understand. Okay, he's moving hands, and oh wait, no, he needs to know that word, so he's going backwards through the text to find it. And once he's got it, he'll obviously work it out from the context. Okay, so that pushing the vocabulary out the way, that's the analogy that hopefully might help them with that. Okay, thank you. So that's about all from me. Just because I'm sure the question is, have you ever used this? And yes, I have. I've already mentioned using it with my IELTS class. They found it very useful. I've also used it with a CAE class. They found it less useful. They were teenagers, so they were a lot more reluctant to do the moves in front of each other. But you know, I think again for some of them, I mean, one of them said to me, "David, I don't need this," and it's like, well, okay, different strategies work for different people. So if it works for you, fine, go for it. If it doesn't,